All right. Well, welcome. Nice to see everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar, which is focused on the importance and potential opportunity of residential building energy standards. I'm Johanna Miller. I lead the Energy and Climate Program at the Vermont Natural Resources Council, and VNRC plays a supportive role in helping to coordinate the state's network of town energy committees in partnership with other organizations, and really just very much appreciate the local leadership of so many grassroots groups and grassroots leaders working across the state of Vermont on clean energy, climate, and energy justice issues. So really glad today to have you all here and to be joined by Ann Janda, who I'm going to introduce in just a moment. Ann is the Senior Energy and Project Manager at the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission. And Ann's really going to dive deeply into the residential building energy standards, or RBES, as they are sometimes affectionately called, which, as you may know, are minimum standards for energy efficient construction that apply to all new residential constructions, additions, renovations, most renovations anyway, alterations and repairs. As you may also know, compliance with RBES is pretty low, and there's no agency having jurisdiction over these standards. So per Act 89 of 2013, municipal officials must provide RBES information when a residential building or zoning permit is applied for. So today's educational session is really intended to explain RBES, these residential building energy standards, in more detail, and what's being done at the state and local levels in support of these energy standards, which we know are good practice for not only cutting climate pollution, but cutting costs and helping make new residential construction more comfortable, more cost-effective, healthier. So this session is presented on behalf of all regional planning commissions via the Vermont Association of Planning and Development Agencies, or VAPDA, and is part of a project led by the Energy Futures Group. So Ann is one of the regional planning commission's in-home experts on this issue. She's worked in Chittenden County with municipalities on a wide range of projects and regional issues since 2014. So her expertise and experience on these issues is long and strong, and really excited to turn it over right now to Ann Janda to walk us through the RBES issues and opportunities. So Ann, take it away. Thanks.
Thank you, Joey. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm really glad to see all of you here. I'm going to get started, but feel free to put questions in the chat or raise your hand. I'm happy to stop at any point and take your questions. So yes, this project and the education that I've been doing has been paid for with a grant from the U.S. Department of Energy. And Energy Futures Group has been leading this project. So Vermont Residential Energy Code, which is kind of how it's referred to, is also known as RBES. I think we need to go back a couple slides, Evelyn. Or it's also referred to as Energy Code. It has been around since 1997. When the legislature created it. So this is nothing new. However, I think we just lost the slides, Evelyn.
Yeah, sorry, my computer froze for a second there. I'm gonna get them back right now.
Okay, thank you. So this is nothing new. However, as the energy code standards have increased, the compliance with the energy code has decreased, which is part of the reason that we are looking into addressing that as a state. And there's lots of issues that we'll get into here in a minute. You just bear with us 1 second here.
And just using this as an opportunity, just to underscore, if you do have questions, Anne has offered her willingness to answer them along the way. So this is really an opportunity to make sure that we are leaning into Anne's expertise and getting your questions answered. Okay. Take it away, Evelyn and Anne.
There we go. Right, as Joey said, RBES applies to new construction as well as additions and renovations and alterations, which may not be as commonly well known. There we go. There are some exemptions in statute, so mobile homes don't have to comply, or summer camps and yurts, or buildings or additions that are neither heated nor cooled, excuse me, or hunting camps, or owner-built and occupied homes. We'll talk about that more in a future slide. Next slide, please. So the energy code is updated about every 3 years. It's based on the International Energy Code that comes out about every 3 years. The most recent update happened in July 2024. So that is in effect now and applies to construction commenced on or after that date. I heard from some contractors that the code document is still looks like it's still in draft form on the Public Service Department website and has red lines in it, but the Energy Code Handbook, which is also linked on the Public Service Department site, is ready to go and has all the information needed to comply with the code. Next slide, please. So here's just a screenshot of the Public Service Department webpage. There's 2 sections under building energy code, energy standards. The one is residential and one is commercial. The compliance with the commercial building energy standard is higher, mostly because those are designed by architects who have a professional liability on the line for buildings that are built with their oversight. That isn't always the case with residential. So what does RBES require? All kinds of things, you know, the amount of insulation. It also now requires mechanical ventilation, combustion safety, moisture management, efficient lighting, low U value windows, etc. Next slide, please. So the good thing is that municipalities do not have to be experts on this. I am actually not an expert. I wish I was. I probably know more than the average citizen at this point. But there are experts available to help with the more technical details of achieving the RBES standard. It's Efficiency Vermont's Energy Code Assistance Center. They can help builders, homeowners, and municipal staff with technical questions. They can clarify the requirements of the code, provide materials, and show builders how to show their compliance. Next slide, please. So this same group has a website with lots of training videos and materials, and they have brochures and posters available for municipalities to print out, to have in their planning and zoning offices, and to be able to hand out to builders and homeowners to educate them on the code. Next slide, please. So every builder has to complete a certificate of compliance. It is the law, it's not optional. The certificate must be provided to the Public Service Department, and recorded in the land records with the town clerk. This is required prior to a municipality issuing a certificate of occupancy. Not all municipalities issue certificates of occupancy, but those that do cannot issue that until they are sure that that certificate of compliance has been recorded in the land records. And that's inexpensive. It's about $15 a page. This is an image of what the certificate of compliance looks like. It is a two-pager, but as you can see, it is chock full of information that needs to be reported. This is currently a self-certification that the builder does. It can also be filled out by an engineer or architect. Next slide, please. Additionally, what we're talking about right now is what we would call the base code, the actual standards that are in the 2024 RBES. But there is also something called stretch code, which is which has higher requirements. And all projects that require an Act 250 permit are required to meet the stretch code. And any municipality that has adopted stretch code also requires it. Right now, I think that's only the city of South Burlington. And I'm looking in the chat and I see Jeffrey is saying that the certificate also needs to be posted in the house on a breaker box or on heating equipment. Thanks for pointing that out. I know that it is posted in commercial spaces by the Department of Fire Safety as well. Let's see, Linda's asking, does anyone have an estimate of the percent of certificates are actually filed as required? So there was a survey done on that. It was this very small survey. And according to that most recent survey, it's about 54%. Anecdotally, it's believed that the compliance rate is even lower than that based on conversations with builders. Okay, and then I'm saying from Sam, a link to online trainings for RBs and CBs. Yes, there are online trainings, especially for contractors, so that they can understand this. And it's good to share that with builders, and we'll get more into that in a future slide. So next slide, please. Okay, so for the builder, there are 3 paths to achieve compliance. The first one is called the package plus points approach. The second one is the use of some software called ResCheck. And then the third is hiring an energy professional called a HERS rater, a home energy. I'm forgetting what the R is. Oh, home energy rating system professional. So if the project has to meet the stretch code, only option 1 or 3 are available. ResCheck cannot be used for stretch code. And again, in the brochure, the handout that municipalities can share with builders, this is explained. You'll see a snippet here on the left in this slide. Next slide, please. So we talked in the first couple of slides about the owner-builder being exempt from the certificate of compliance. The owner-builder still has to fill out what's called a disclosure statement prior to the sale of the building. So to qualify as an owner-builder that doesn't have to do the certificate right away, the owner must actually be in charge of construction and must live in the building. Next slide, please. So the The disclosure statement looks a lot like the certificate of compliance. The first page has a different signature section, but essentially they have to disclose to the buyer all the ways that their building may not have complied with the code so that the buyer is aware of that. And again, this just applies to the owner of a residential property that built and lived in that building. Next slide, please. So here we are, compliance again, you know, maybe 50% compliance is occurring. There are many reasons for that. The state of Vermont does not have a statewide building code. And especially regarding residential building energy code, there is no agency having jurisdiction over that. The Public Service Department issues the RBES, like I said, every 3 years, and you can find all the information on their website, but statute does not require them to enforce it. So builders are asked to self-certify. Again, it is the law that they submit these certificates of compliance. But again, they can self-certify. The only way that municipalities can do some enforcement is by withholding a certificate of occupancy, if that is their policy in that municipality. Like I said, not all municipalities require a certificate of occupancy. So what's happening, so this project is happening, the education and outreach is happening. My audiences are municipal audiences. Efficiency Vermont has already done a ton of outreach and education for this grant to builders, contractors, and energy professionals. There's also legislative study groups who've been working on this issue. And lastly, one good thing that might be occurring soon is that the Department of Fire Safety is possibly going to open up their code database to include certificates of compliance for RBES. That's where a lot of the other code certificates are housed. And that is a searchable database, and that would make it a lot easier for a homeowner or a home buyer or seller to see how energy efficient, compliant their building is with the code. So that's hopefully going to happen in the near future. Next slide, please. So again, in terms of enforcement, you know, when I first started in my energy role, I got lots of questions from planning commissions and energy committees about how they could enforce the building energy code. And we had always felt at CCRPC that municipalities were kind of on shaky ground because we didn't see anything in statute enabling that. And so it was really great that the Public Service Department had their special counsel, Ben Civiletti, put together his opinion, which went into one of the legislative working groups papers, reports, that, you know, there's no clear authority to administer building energy codes at the municipal level. So again, there's very few levers that can be pressed at the municipal level. So I'm looking at the chat. Yeah, so Melinda Scott in Williston is saying, yes, you can look up RBES in the town land records. That can happen right now. It just may not be as easy in some towns as in others. Jeffrey Gephardt says Efficiency Vermont has a $750 incentive to use a HERS rater in its new residential new construction program. That's correct. Yes. and hopefully over time that incentive will grow to make it easier for builders to meet the standard. Next slide, please. All right, so recently, Energy Futures Group also created a municipal guide to energy code for municipal staff, municipal officials to use. It explains Act 89 and all of the obligations that municipal officials have in providing RBES and CBES information when a building or zoning permit is applied for. It also explains that all municipalities have the option of adopting stretch code if they want to increase the efficiency of local construction. To date, we only know of South Burlington doing that. And I've pasted in here how they did it. This is some language that was added to their zoning regulations, pretty simple, and that enables them to adopt the stretch code. And Efficiency Vermont's Code Assistance Center can assist with any technical questions, like I said. Okay, next slide, please. So what can municipalities do, given that they can't necessarily go out and inspect homes and make sure that they are meeting the code? Right now, today, municipalities can either request or just go to the Efficiency Vermont Energy Code Assistance Center and print out brochures and posters. They can ensure that they have a language on their website that explains RBES and provides a link to the Energy Code Support Center. They can advocate and promote the energy standard and above code construction. They can assist new homeowners understanding how to comply with RBES, and they can call attention to RBES requirement for renovation projects. That was big news to me when I started working on this presentation, is that renovation projects are often have to also meet the code. I'm looking in the chat, and Henry Bonjes is saying that I think Milton also adopted the stretch code some years back. He's going to double check on that. Yeah, definitely let me know, Henry, if that's true. I'll add that to the presentation. I wasn't aware of that. Next slide, please. So here's a little bit of additional information. So the updated energy code has requirements for EV charging. This was an addition to the international code that was recently published, and VEIC put together a very nice 4-page paper explaining what is required. And so this is also available, and when new construction is happening, this can be shared to make it easy for the builder, for the owner of the building, etc., to understand the EV charging requirements. Next slide, please. All right, that is the end of my presentation. We can probably stop sharing and see if there's any questions. So Will has added to the chat, frustrating that there are low incentives, no enforcement, regulatory confusion. Seems like there's not much for energy committees to do until the state decides to take this seriously. Thanks, thanks, Will. So yes, I agree with you. Right now, it looks pretty bleak. But I think part of the problem is this has been a sleepy issue, and that you know, number one, getting the education and materials out there, making sure municipals understand their obligation to ensure that builders know what's required of them. That's really important. But also there are some bills that have been working their way through this legislative session, which I don't know if they will be taken up this legislative session. But there is a component, I believe, in S65 that would enable Efficiency Vermont to claim energy savings for just supporting code compliance. This would give them more resources to support code compliance and would potentially give them more money for more incentives, like we're talking about, like somebody mentioned previously, the incentive to pay for an energy professional, a HERS rater, to help the builder from the beginning of a construction project to the end, to ensure that things are done properly throughout. It's very hard to go in and assess a building after it's been built to make sure that it has achieved the RBES standard. Joey, do you know where that piece of legislation is at this point?
Yeah, so S65, which Ann is referring to, had provisions that would have enabled the energy efficiency utilities to flex more of their resources beyond electric efficiency and into the thermal and transportation arena, and the provision related to energy codes that Ann just referenced. I believe at this time that bill is not moving forward. So unclear, and it seems unlikely that the energy code provision that you just referenced, Ann, that would have enabled her efficiency utilities to claim benefits and savings from energy code compliance will not move forward this legislative session, but it is on the radar of, I know, at least a few legislative allies who are interested.
And that is definitely something that I would advocate all Energy Committee members put some energy into for the next legislative session. That component is also going to be in the report that Energy Futures Group puts out and shares with the state of Vermont. That type of effort would make a big difference in moving us forward in increasing compliance. So Eve, you've had your hand up for a while, so go ahead.
So I've been involved in our town's energy committee for about 10 years. And part of the responsibility that was taken on was to make sure that the zoning administrator in the town had stacks of information to disseminate to people who were applying for zoning permits. About 3 years ago, I took on the job of zoning administrator for the town of Huntington, and I got to find all of the stacks that had been delivered in the prior 5 years just sitting in a box on the floor. And it occurs to me, listening to this session, that although municipalities may advocate for RBs to be used, they may withhold certificates of occupancy, which is certainly the case in the town of Huntington. The target audience that is largely not complying, in my 3 years of experience, are builders. And I'm wondering if this information about it being mandatory for towns that do issue certificate of occupancies has been disseminated effectively to builders. There are, realistically a limited number of builders in this state. It's where they're not in the tens of thousands. And certainly getting the information to builders that this is a requirement, and maybe a requirement for their upcoming project, might be an effective way, non-legislatively, to at least have those builders aware that the project is going to require this this certification, And there are some subset of builders that might attend the Better Building by Design on an annual basis who are more likely to know about this because that's typically more what they specialize in. But the vast majority of builders that I deal with, and our tiny town of 2,000 people, have no idea, no interest, and it's unfortunate, but it's the homeowner typically, especially if they've got a bank financing it, and the bank wants to see a certificate of occupancy, that has to chase down the builder, the plumber, or whoever did the HVAC to get that information. And maybe it would make some sense to disseminate that information to the builders statewide, and it probably wouldn't cost that much.
Yeah, so you bring up an excellent point, and I'm really glad you did, Eve, because there's some work being done on that as we speak. As part of this project, the Office of Professional Regulation at the state is putting together a registry for contractors so that they can provide this educational information to contractors and let them know that it's part of their professional accountability. And it's been tough up until this point because we didn't even have a required registry for contractors in the past. And so we couldn't even get the state couldn't get this information to them because they just didn't have the list, essentially. So that is going to happen. And, in addition to that, Efficiency Vermont is doing just a ton of outreach. But I'll tell you, like, after looking into this, it's hard. It's not easy. And it really helps to have an energy professional there helping builders to achieve the code. That's why I think that the legislation that we spoke of earlier is so important, because the more funding there is to pay for a HERS rater to basically be a part of the project from the beginning to the end, that's just going to make it so much easier for the builder. And they'll know immediately at the beginning of the project what their path to compliance is. They choose the path at the beginning rather than at the end, and then follow that path. And I'm seeing that Nick Atherton is saying that has led to some very narrow paths to compliance and higher construction costs. So having to do with, narrow paths to compliance, of the three options to achieve compliance, utilizing a HERS rater, an energy professional, is the most flexible because it enables there to be pathways that include things like renewable energy generation, like solar, as well as the types of appliances that are installed in the building. If they're all, highly efficient, that contributes points to compliance. So again, that's probably really the best way to go about it. But that isn't the way it's happening now. There's some other issues having to do with, maybe not enough HERS raters in Vermont. But if there's a market for it, if it's known that that's really the best way to go, there will be more energy professionals looking to become HERS raters and doing this work. So I'm seeing Linda Gray says, who's working on educating general contractors how to meet RBES? So that is the Efficiency Vermont Energy Code Assistance Center, has been doing a ton of trainings. And if you go to their webpage, I think someone has put that into the chat already, hopefully. Sam, if you haven't done it yet, could you please? You'll see a whole slew of really good webinars that are there. They will also talk to builders and answer questions, and in some cases, do site visits, etc. Nick, you have your hand up.
Thanks, Ann. Yeah, hi, Nick Atherton, City Planner, City of South Burlington. And I have my colleague Lou Brzee, our Energy Systems Manager, with me in the room. Wanted to just follow up on my comment, which you addressed earlier. The reason I mentioned that is because we're conducting, our planning department is conducting a review of our form-based code, which is a special variety of zoning code that covers our burgeoning downtown center here on Market Street, along Dorset Street. And that was passed in 2020, and it has very strong controls and specific controls over things like doorway spacing, stories, heights, sort of three-dimensional aspects of building design, down to even things like percentage and spacing of windows, to allowed types of exterior materials, that sort of stuff. We found that regulating these to such a exacting degree created these conflicts with this RBES and CBES codes. Now, most of these buildings that I'm referring to were built under the CBES, the commercial standards. So I understand those are a little bit different, but a number of them were built under RBES. And the issue for the contractors was the same, regardless of the method that they used to certify. They were often being forced to make trade-offs. So, for instance, to comply with our regulation on how much transparency in windows needed to be on a particular story, they needed to forego, for instance, other things, like maybe they wanted to do 25% windows to allow for some other RBES trade-off. They were forced to do 30%. It basically shrunk the box that they were able to operate in terms of RBES compliance, which then had a multiplying effect on their ability to comply with our regulations as well. And I offer this not as a caution to say that, or as a criticism of the RBES code or how it's been implemented or enforced, but rather just as a cautionary note for those of us who are looking to innovate with our zoning codes and perhaps interested in instituting more control over things like built environment. Just, want to keep in mind these sort of unintended effects that these overlapping and interlocking codes can have on one another, because we're on our second year basically disentangling this problem among other ones. So I just wanted to flag that a little bit. Sorry, Lou.
Thank you.
Let me add a little bit to that, and that is the buildings that we're talking about are pretty large construction projects. So the situation is dramatically different than what takes place in Huntington on an average basis. There are applicable discussions, but it's a clear case where one size doesn't always fit all.
It is, and the one thing I'll say too, and then I'll yield the floor, but just that I just want to caution people to make sure that they are examining any potential new zoning or ordinance changes that might interact with RBES, to see if it might, for instance, just push someone into, for instance, building a building according to the CBES or abandoning a particular type of project. We did find that people were making that our very specific and stringent build form regulations interacting with not just RBES and CBES, but also life and safety and fire codes, basically kind of precluded certain kinds of developments from even penciling out in the area that we were regulating. And so builders often they didn't build something, but they basically forewent a certain design that they had in mind and opted to just do something more, in this case, more generic and probably a little less attractive and interesting on the street. So just wanted to flag our particular and unique experiences with CBES.
I'm really glad to know that, Nick, and I've noted it, and I'll share it with the advisory group that's working on this project. I am assuming, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm assuming that as you make any updates to your form-based code, to ensure that it's not in conflict with the RBs, that the Energy Code Assistance Center could help you with that. Okay, so Henry Bonges is saying that higher cost is a vague term. It sets tone more than meaning. A more efficient building, especially with renewables, will cost more money well spent. So that is an excellent point. It's not always considered at the beginning of a construction project when, you know, builders are trying to compete, you know, in providing, you know, the lowest cost for whoever's asking something to be built. But yes, the lifetime costs for a very efficient home are lower. You know, there's going to be more upfront costs, especially if it's a you know, built with a ground source heat pump. I'll just put my plug in there. If that's doable for a building, there's a high upfront cost, but over the lifetime of the building, the energy costs are just so much lower. And then, you know, windows that are south facing, etc., can make a huge difference. There's lots of things that can keep a home, you know, very affordable for and resilient for a long time. Jeffrey, you have your hand up.
Yeah, a couple of points here. I believe that the current iteration of code requires air tightness testing. And that Efficiency Vermont had worked for a number of years to try to train builders to do that testing themselves. I think that would require also some continuing education. And I don't know how many non-HERS rater air tightness testing approved contractors, builders there are out there. That would be something to find out. Normally, over the many years I've been involved, they have between 8 and 12 HERS raters, dependent upon the participation rates in the program in their new construction service. I attended Better Buildings by Design myself this last week and bumped into 5 HERS raters that were there. And I suspect there were some others, though, that didn't come to the conference. HERS training, I would guess that if VIC, Efficiency Vermont, has a need for more people, that they would support their training probably through the New England HERS Alliance. Let's see, what else? Builders don't know about it. When the code first went into place, I participated in code trainings on the efficiency program side of things. We have a code training, everybody comes out, they're all pissed off, they learn about the code, and then my job was to follow up and say, but you can get all of this assistance from Efficiency Vermont, and as long as you enroll in the new construction service, and we would provide the HERS certificate, board or testing, and the HERS certificate as part of successful completion. And as far as they don't know, when we were doing these trainings, we kept a database of who attended. And I don't know how many times some builder told me they had no idea about this code, and I could look in the database and say, well, why'd you attend these 3 code sessions? You know, there's a lot of disingenuousness with that. And what I did learn at the conference was that Efficiency Vermont will have 2 people now that are circuit riders. They're going to go out and they're going to look at buildings in progress. And then I suspect if they act as they have in the past, they're going to be doing this as an educational service, not punitive from the standpoint of what they find when they get out there. And the cost issue, well, yes, it can well increase the cost, but a builder doesn't make any money on a fuel bill for a house later. Is to say,
Good
put
point.
it in their asset, you know, and you know, mark up more of it and put it in your pocket. But that's what I got to say.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Really appreciated. Yeah, I was at the Better Building by Design conference as well, and it was recommended that builders actually do the blower door test several times throughout the project to ensure that, you know, what they're doing is being done correctly.
Yeah, a blower door is about $2,000 these days, and maybe another 800 for the manometer. So it's not a inexpensive tool, but it's a very effective one.
That's good. That's a good comment. That's good to know. And maybe something we can think about in terms of things that we might want to create incentives for, just to get contractors on the right path. Okay, so we've got a little more than 10 minutes left. Still looks like there's a couple questions in the chat. Catherine Crowley asks, as we are updating our town plans, are there any recommendations on how to include some of this in the energy chapters of our town plan? That is an excellent question. Thank you, Catherine. Yes, in the slides where it says, you know, what can municipalities do? I would articulate all of those bullet points in the energy section of your town plan, that municipalities will have a web page that will link to the Efficiency Vermont Code Assistance Center, that they will provide this information to builders that are applying for zoning permits, that they will, you know, provide brochures, etc., and that they will be knowledgeable about the code and be educated on the all the things that they need to do. As when this is over and you receive the link to the recording, you'll also receive the slides. And you can also contact me directly if you'd like me to type that out for you. I'd be happy to do it. There are energy plans right now within town plans that have that kind of language.
And I'm
Yeah.
also, there's some really great content in the chat that people have been dropping in, Sam in particular, that we will aim to capture the chat so we can capture this content, maybe in a follow-up email with resources, including a link to the presentation.
Fantastic. Yes, I've been seeing those links go through, and thank you for everyone who is doing that. So Nick says, if cost limits building type options, for instance, precluding mission middle housing, then it is quite relevant and has more meaning than simply tone. I think that was responding to a previous post in the chat. Are there any other questions? So this presentation was for energy committees. There are going to be 2 more presentations that are going to happen specifically for municipal staff. You know, that includes zoning, planning staff, town managers and administrators, and town clerks. There's one that's going to happen statewide on May 15th. And so we really encourage you to encourage your town staff to attend that session. So Salty Dog, you have your hand up.
Hi, I'm the energy coordinator for Plainfield, and we don't have a certificate of occupancy or anything like that that might halfway hold, you know, people to code. The best that I was able to do, and this is really frustrating because for years and years and years now, it seems like 15 years at least, that we've had the Department of Public Service hold forth with their RBs and CBs, and there's never been any kind of enforcement. It's always up to the town. It's always up to the energy coordinator, the town clerk, the select board to do that kind of stuff. It doesn't happen. So the best that I've been able to do in the past is to provide the literature, ensure, and I had a very cooperative town clerk that I worked with. So whenever somebody requested a building permit, which was for both new starts and renovations that would change the footprint, for example, of a structure, then they would be awarded one of those and the clerk would let me know. And I would try to get out for a site visit, and rather than coming on as the big stick, I'd try to come on offering carrots, like, did you know that Washington Electric Co-op offers this much incentive for a energy efficient house, or that you can get a rebate on appliances from Efficiency Vermont, et cetera, et cetera. And I tried to inspire, builders or renovators that something would happen like that, whether it ever hit the ground or not, but I could take a ride by and see if it looked like things were going on. There are some builders such as Montpelier Construction who won't do the work for you unless you agree ahead of time that their work is going to be RBs or CBs, and that they're not going to build without, because that's just their morality, that they're going to build to standards. So I'm encouraging people to keep at it. It's one of the retrofitting is so much harder to do in doing weatherization, after the fact. And it's just really sad when it gets built crappy to begin with. And I have a little concern about I'll call them the COVID renovations, that people freaked out during COVID and bought the old farmhouse out on the back road and then hired contractors for unbelievable amounts of money so they couldn't do the regular work that everybody else needed. And I'm hoping that it wasn't all about marble baths and kitchens, and that there was some energy work done by responsible builders out in the hills. So I'll check there. Thank you. Good to see a lot of faces here.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you. That was really good comment. Plainfield is a special place in my heart because that's the first place that I lived when I moved to Vermont. So, and I hear really great things about the Energy Committee in Plainfield. So thank you for all the work that you're doing.
Yeah, if you have a declaration of climate emergency in place, you can also go back to that pretty easily and say, hey, the citizens of town at town meeting approved this, and you as public officials are supposed to be acting like there is a climate emergency here. So you can kind of get a little bit of clout on your side sometimes by saying that, or helping with that and reminding of that. So I'll stop there.
Awesome.
Thank you, Bob. And maybe that's a good segue to getting us out of this conversation on time. But I just really want to thank you all for joining. Thank Ann for providing such really important content and drawing your attention to the link to the survey that Ann has asked folks to fill out if you are able. And I wanted to mention a couple of other things. Is there anything else you would like to say?
Oh, just to follow up on that certificate of occupancy, if your municipality doesn't have it, I'm not necessarily saying that it should have it. There is an expense involved with issuing certificates of occupancy. It creates, staff time. I see Eves is like nodding his head. It can be expensive. So just keep that in mind. But go ahead, Joey.
That's great. Thank you all for the content, the great questions and insights and input. We will package all of this up, aim to capture the chat. Maybe Evelyn, will you capture the final chat? I think I got it a little bit too soon. And really want to say, thanks to Ann. Huge thanks to my fabulous colleague, Evelyn, for all of your help in putting this together. Evelyn, wave your hand so everyone can see you. And we will certainly be following up Also just wanted to put two other things on your radar. This is our third to last webinar in our winter webinar series. It's still feels a little bit like winter out there, but we will be, in May will be upon us sooner than we can imagine. I wanted to just put two other opportunities on your radar. Our next webinar will take place on Wednesday, April 23rd at noon. And that webinar is really going to be focused on the status of the implementation of the Climate Superfund law that is aimed at, ensuring that the largest fossil fuel companies in the world are helping to pay for some of the escalating costs from the damages that their products have caused. And a core component embedded in that Climate Superfund is the resilience implementation strategy that is being led out of the Agency of Natural Resources and the Treasurer's Office. So this resilience implementation strategy is a really important piece of work intended to help identify needed resilience strategies, investments, priorities, and then potentially fund them through some of the funds that the Superfund would raise. So this is a really important body of work as we look to help our communities adapt and become more resilient in a warming world. So put that webinar on your radars and on your calendar if you can join us again at noon on the 23rd. And then lastly, if it's not on your radar, just a reminder or a note that the Climate Council, the Climate Action Office, is hosting a series of public input opportunities on the update to the Climate Action Plan, which is a guiding framework for ensuring Vermont does its part to cut planet warming pollution, which also is a cost saver for, struggling households, businesses in the state, as we know. And so really important for you all to show up and speak up at those events. The first one starts tomorrow night virtually. And then there will be a series of 7 in-person events across Vermont. Evelyn just dropped in the chat a link to find more information about those events. So again, just encouraging you to show up and speak up at those events to the degree that you are able.
Could I ask a quick question about that? Is it more important to go to the virtual one or to the in-person one, or does it matter how many you go to?
It doesn't matter how many you go to. I think the virtual one will be, I think, pretty brief. There's a lot of content that they're going to cover in a very limited time. So to the degree you have interest in this, and I really hope you all do as local leaders and partners in progress in the professional roles that you have, participate as much as you are able and encourage others to do so as well. But I think you cannot, I think in person is always most impactful to the, so to the degree that you are able to do that, I would prioritize that.
Okay, thanks.
So very much appreciate your time today, Ann. Thank you so much again. I think there's lots of good content that we can follow up on, and just really appreciate the work happening in communities all across Vermont. So hope to see you on April 23rd at noon, or see you out and about for the public engagement sessions happening for the Climate Action Plan due July 1st, 2025. It's 1 o'clock. Enjoy the rest of your day. The sun is shining. I hope you get some good vitamin D, and thanks so much again.